In the last couple of days, we've seen more strikes on Ukraine. I think the largest drone strikes as well by Russia on Ukraine.
Yeah, last night, 273 drones and decoys, according to the Ukrainian Air Ministry, which their figures are normally pretty accurate. Certainly in those numbers, they say that they downed or neutralised 200 of them. Mm-hmm. We don't know. That might be an overestimate, but certainly quite a lot got through. And the previous day, there was this attack on a bus that was they just say in the northeast, because they won't specify it too much, because it was leaving the front lines with civilians on board to evacuate them. There was a strike on the bus, at least 9 killed. It was pretty awful stuff. So, I mean, the Russians are indicating that while possible talks about ceasefires are ongoing, they're keeping up the pressure as far as possible. So they're doing that all the way around the front line. But they're also doing it with these air attacks, and they're stepping up these attacks. On every few days, while they can, they hit a new high number. And last night, it seems to have been drones and decoys, no mention of ballistic missiles. That might come in the next couple of days because they mix the ballistic missiles in with drones, when the drone attacks have actually exhausted quite a lot of the air defence ammunition.
Softened them up.
That Ukrainians have got.
Yeah. Fascinating as well that the numbers of strikes are still so high, considering the stage in the war that we find ourselves. President Zelensky is in the Vatican, you will have seen. He's meeting with the Pope later on today. Don't suppose we'll get a readout, but interesting that sort of diplomacy continues. And of course, we've got this expectation that Trump is going to speak to both Zelensky and Putin tomorrow. What do we make of that?
And he also said he would speak to the Europeans. And interestingly, these days, President Trump says, I'll talk to the Europeans. He never said that at all. And he's now said it on 2 or 3 occasions, that it seems to have got to him that the Europeans are a part of this picture, whether he likes it or not. The thing is, I mean, his conversation with Putin, we've no idea what that will be. One would imagine that he may express his regrets that the Russians keep stepping up their attacks. But I suspect it'll be all the functional stuff about, look, we ought to meet as soon as reasonable to do this. Putin will want to meet as soon as possible, because for Putin, this is not about ceasefire in Ukraine. That's what will get Trump to a meeting. But for Putin, this is all about him striding the world stage, emerging from pariah status as a man, remember, who's indicted by the ICC for war crimes, being there, one-to-one with the American president. So that's what he wants. And of course, when he gets there, he wants to talk about an economic partnership, a strategic partnership with the United States. He wants to get Ukraine out of the way, whereas Trump will want to be able to go to a meeting and say, I have negotiated a ceasefire. So on the one hand, Putin doesn't want a ceasefire, but he really does want this summit. And he will have to decide from the phone call tomorrow whether to rush to a summit for the bigger picture from his point of view, but can he keep on, as it were, delaying a ceasefire after he's had a meeting with Trump?
I mean, the fascinating thing is that these are talks about arranging the talks.
Yeah, talks.
When if we will get a date for those talks, and if Trump really wants to be the peacemaker, Zelensky offered to meet Putin, last week in Istanbul. Could Trump offer that as a way of bringing the two men together? I mean, he'd certainly love a picture of that, wouldn't he?
Well, he should say wherever this meeting is to take place, then Zelensky should be there. I mean, ideally, of course, he should be at the table. So should representatives from Europe. But you would imagine that the Russians will actually push for a Trump-Putin meeting.
That'll tell us something, won't it, if they demarcate the talks?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, even in Istanbul last week, Anton was there from the State Department. He was a deputy director of policy planning in the State Department. And he was planning to be in those talks. And the Russians said, no, you can't come in. They excluded him. And both the hosts and the Ukrainians couldn't do anything about it. So the Russians had the power to kick the Americans out of those talks, even at a low-level American official, which shows how much they are in control of this process. They've got the United States on the end of a string. And at the moment, they are dictating the agenda, how it is handled and so on. Now, whether President Trump in a phone call tomorrow can somehow reverse that momentum, can actually put pressure on Putin and give him something to worry about, we'll have to see. It'll be fascinating to see what the White House tells us is the readout from the phone call. They'll give us an account of what was said, and we can either believe it or not, but it'll be interesting to see what it is they say they talked about.